had a silent voice on my Netflix list for about 2 years. I always knew I kind of liked romance movies and anime, but always felt embarrassed about that fact. A lot of nights my finger would hover over it and maybe watch the preview, think about it for a bit, and then get embarrassed and would move on to the next shitty episode of The Green Arrow instead. Even though I love the art style and hentai was my shit, I couldn't get myself to watch anime, let alone a romance anime. And that's why the movie sat there for so long. My journey into anime started my senior year of high school. I had just finished watching Sherlock and had Death Note recommended to me by Netflix. I knew the basic premise of the show and had heard from so many friends about how good Death Note was. Netflix said it was a 98% match, and I'd say their stats weren't wrong. Pretty certain I watched the whole thing in a week. I loved seeing the batshit crazy schemes and mind games all the characters play. It was fun to watch even if I didn't like the show as much once Nier came into play. The next fish I fried was Full Metal Alchemist. Not Brotherhood, the other one. I didn't know the difference, and Brotherhood to me sounded more like a spin-off rather than the better version. But I did really enjoy Full Metal. I was confident enough even to watch it on my family's TV, when my parents weren't home. A couple of my younger siblings actually would join me sometimes. My little sister actually loved it when Scar transmutes that whole ass city. I really love that episode specifically because I watched it with my sister and we both had such a great time. From here, I'd watch a new show every now and again. Next was Seven Deadly Sins, then Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, then One Punch Man. I was an anime fan. A basic bitch one for sure, but definitely a fan. And I was no longer afraid to admit it. That brings us to the fall of 2020. COVID! Woo! At this time, theaters were open in my area with masks and social distancing. Being 2020, nothing new was coming out, so there was a lot of showings of older movies. I saw an ad for a showing for Akira. This bad boy had been sitting on my list for a fat minute. All I knew is it's got cool cover art, Young Gravy uses it in one of his verses,
got Akira flow,
and it was rated R. I was definitely interested. I got some friends, and we had a great time. And here's why that matters. One of my friends brought his wife, and another friend asked him, "Hey, do you think she'll like the movie?" And he said, "Well, she liked the one with the deaf girl." Huh, I should watch that. Just a passing thought. It probably would have stayed that way, like it had so many times before, if I hadn't enjoyed Akira so much. That night was a super great one. I was stoned with a big old bucket of popcorn in my lap, good friends, and a really stunning movie to watch. Akira had some absolutely beautiful shots. Overall, a fantastic night. And then, a few days later, scrolled through Netflix and clicked on A Silent Voice. I figured I was going to enjoy A Silent Voice about as much as I liked Akira. A good 7 out of 10. A yeah, it was good kind of movie for me. But nope, I was wrong. So from here, we're talking about A Silent Voice. I'm going to start with a spoiler-free kind of summary and what I thought about the movie, and then get into a more specific parts with spoilers later. I'll give a warning before then, because please, if you haven't seen this film, go watch it, especially blind. The basic plot of the film revolves around the two main characters, Shoya and Shoko. Shoko is deaf and transfers to Shoya's elementary school, and well, Shoya bullied the shit out of her, so much that she ends up changing schools. Then, a few years later in high school, Shoya and Shoko reconnect, and Shoya tries to make amends with her. It's heavy, it's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming, and it's utterly beautiful. The movie tackles some really heavy topics like mental health, bullying, death, and suicide. Every character's struggles feel so real, especially if they're things you've dealt with personally. I related a lot to Shoya's struggle with shutting everyone out, and Shoko's struggle with feeling like an outsider and a freak, and quite a lot more as well, to be honest. By the end of the movie, I was both heartbroken and hopeless at the same time, as uplifted and filled with joy and full of hope. I know that doesn't sound possible, but it's what A Silent Voice did to me. The art is absolutely stunning. A Silent Voice has so many incredible shots and montages, and the cinematography is honestly a masterwork. Every shot emphasizes the mood really, really well. The opening shot is a really good example of this. It opens with our main character, Shoya, walking alone through a somber field. The camera's framed far away and we get the impression that Shoya is lonely, and then the title appears. It sets this somber, lonely vibe and emphasizes the movie's themes incredibly. One of my favorite uses of the cinematography is how whenever Shoya or another character is uncomfortable in a conversation or situation, then we mainly get shots of body parts, legs, arms, feet, anything but the faces. It really emphasizes the anxieties involved in the conversation. Every shot has the feeling that it was crafted with care and carefully. It's awesome. I loved it. On top of all of this visual beauty and storytelling, it's also paired with a score that really helps emphasize the mood of every shot. Shoko's theme is by far my favorite piece in the score. The intro to the film has some rockin' music and lots of shots of Shoya and his friends running around and being crazy kids. Then, a few minutes into the movie when Shoko is introduced, everything goes extremely quiet and we hear her beautiful piano melody start to play. When you first hear her theme, you know exactly who she is. You know she's sweet and gentle. You know she deals with a lot of shit. When that transition happened, I lost my breath. I fell in love with the movie right then. It gave me a bit of emotional whiplash, to be honest. Shoko's theme represents her character so accurately. Plus, the mix-in makes it so shots focused on her, virtually all sound is cut out except just her theme. They made the music emphasize being deaf, and I think that's incredible. Every track on the score helps enhance the mood of the scene in the same way. When I went back and listened to the soundtrack the day after I watched A Silent Voice, the track didn't make me think of the melody, it made me think of the scene or character. And that's what a good score should do, and A Silent Voice does it well. I can't talk too much more about the plot and ending yet, but let me just say I've never cried this much while watching a movie. I sat there for 30 minutes just crying after it ended. Deadass. It's an emotional roller coaster and it will fuck you up. Not even the Supernatural finale had me crying this much. There's a lot I want to talk about spoiler-wise, but we'll get there eventually. For now, let's talk about the aftermath of watching the film, because I've never had a piece of media do this to me before. Let's get into it. Okay, so night one I cried for a while. I had just finished watching an incredible movie and it impacted me really hard. I figured, let's just go to bed. You'll feel better in the morning, but here's the thing. I woke up with tears rolling down my face. Just a few, but damn, I was sad. And damn, I felt hopeless. I remember lying in bed for 3 hours that Sunday morning, thinking about A Silent Voice. Feeling this odd joy mixed with sadness. It had a large dose of depression, and the reality of life was just like in my face. More on why it made me feel that in the spoilers section. We'll get there. Anyway, all day Sunday, I couldn't stop thinking about A Silent Voice. I really wanted to watch it again, so I did. That night, I watched it again to see if it would still hit me. I didn't think it would because I'd already seen it, but nope, same result. Entranced the whole time, and this very odd, despair-filled joy at the end. With the same result Monday morning. Monday I had work. All I wanted to do was watch A Silent Voice again, but sadly that doesn't pay the bills. I still couldn't get it out of my head, so I listened to the soundtrack on repeat while at work. I remember taking a delivery out and a variation of Shoko's theme from the last scene in the movie played, and I started bawling right then and there just from that. I eventually decided that listening to the score was a bad idea and I should try to move on from the movie, because I can't live up my life on the verge of tears because of a romance anime. I also told myself I couldn't watch it again. Well, I watched it again Tuesday night. This time I still enjoyed the movie. I wasn't crushed by it, and it was more what I expected a second viewing to be like, even though it was my third viewing, if that makes sense. Over the couple days after that, I kept listening to the score at least once a day, and I would still get some emotions well up if I thought about certain parts of the movie. And I'm not crazy. I'm not alone in what A Silent Voice did to me. I ended up posting on their subreddit about how I was feeling and the desire to constantly rewatch the movie. A lot of people commented and related with what I was saying, and I ended up finding quite a few other posts from other users about having the same experience. One poster said, "As a guy who was bullied all 3 years in middle school and then closed myself off and never trusted almost anyone, this movie and manga was a salvation. Since I've seen the movie last August, I tried and began to listen to other people again, and now have my own university group which I hang out and study with. There are a lot of posts on their subreddit about this kind of thing, and one of them is mine. A silent voice really hit me hard, and I really want to dive into the why, and for that we need spoilers. So please, if you've watched this far and you haven't seen A Silent Voice, stop watching this video and go watch the movie. Really, it's an incredible experience and a beautiful, heartbreaking story. You won't regret it. It's on Netflix right now. Now for the rest of you, let's get into the why. This is your final spoiler warning. Okay, we're going to talk about my favorite parts and why I love them. The opening as a whole is definitely a favorite. After the opening few shots I talked about earlier, we get the opening credits. It starts playing this awesome rock and roll song with tons of shots of a young Shoya and his friends being crazy. It's giving me such whiplash. We started with this sober opening, and it just had me wondering who the lone figure was, and then bam, we switched to the opening credits, and it was just so fun. And it really tells us who Shoya was back in grade school. He was just a rambunctious, crazy kid. It made me smile right off the bat. I really love how it helps the impact of events to come. The first shots make us wonder, and then the credits make us smile, and then we get the impact of Shoko's introduction right after this. It's the start of the roller coaster of emotions that's to come, and it's a damn good start. Shoya Ishida felt like me, and the way they choose to show his anxiety is perfect. I was honestly stunned. Everyone has an X on their face except Shoya's family. He never looks anyone in the face for more than a few seconds. Like what? This is amazing. When this is introduced, I felt such a strong connection with Shoya because anxiety is something I struggle with. Shoya felt like a part of me. A lot of his struggles are some of my own. Feeling like an outcast, feeling unwanted or unforgivable, thinking things would be better off if you jumped. Shoya Ishida is a big reason I love this film. He really did feel like me. Even Tomohiro Nagatsuka looks a lot like one of my closest friends, and their friendship actually reminded me of ours. In fact, a lot of Shoya's friends remind me of real people in my lives. Some in appearance and others in personality, and it's not like it's a one-to-one comparison, but it really just helped me empathize with all of the characters as a whole. And the only other exception to this was actually Shoko. She didn't remind me really of any of my friends or family or anyone really in my life except me. She reminded me of me. Now, I'm not deaf, nor have I dealt with the absolute shit being bullied out of me. But what I related to was mainly her feeling of being a burden and disliking of herself. Those are things that I struggle with myself. So I really related to her as well. In fact, most of Shoya and Shoko's struggles I related with heavily. A lot of their mental health difficulties are things that I myself struggle with. When the main characters feel like a part of you, you fall in love with them. I was invested in their success from the get-go. That brings us to the start of their journey. Shoya doesn't jump. Success. But why? Because of her. His biggest regret, he never set right. His debts were paid, he had ripped his calendar in half, marked his final days, and everything was in order. But he still had that notebook. She already saved him. And that's fucking beautiful. He gets down and he ends up going to see her. And they talk. They start to become friends. Afterwards, we see his calendar again. Before, it had been ripped in half, marking his days down to his last day. But now, it's stapled together again with the new days drawn on. He's decided to live. And that was the first time I cried. I only teared up, but I did cry. But he stayed for her. Like, he literally was about to kill himself, but didn't. On top of staying, he also gets better for her. He tries to be a better person in a lot of ways. He's a friend of Shoko. He helped Yuzuru when she ran away from home. He helped Tomohiro with his bike, and just generally starts being kind to other people. Shoko ends up growing too. She starts scared of Shoya, running from him at their reintroduction, but starts to trust him. She eventually learns to be okay with who she is. But I've got to address the elephant in the room here. If you've seen A Silent Voice, then I'm sure you know what we're about to get into. For anyone who hasn't seen the movie, I want to give a trigger warning. We're getting into mega spoilers and suicide. So, just a heads up. At this point, a big fight had taken place between everyone, and it was really just Shoya, Shoko, and Yuzuru left. It was summer vacation, and no one was really talking to each other after the fight, and Shoko felt like it was her fault. It wasn't. It was Shoya's, but Shoko hates herself. We learned that at the amusement park. Shortly before this scene, Shoko says to Shoya that she thinks he'll just be miserable whenever she's around. She's not doing great. She feels like a burden, she feels like a failure, and she feels like the world would be better off without her. And she decides she's going to kill herself. One night during the summer, there's a fireworks show. Shoya attends with Shoko and her family. After a bit, Shoko says she's got to go study. Shoya says goodnight, but things feel off. All throughout the film, the sign for see you later has a very large role. Shoko ends their first meeting with that sign, and Shoya even remarks on how it means it's okay for him to see her again. Whenever they part ways, she says see you later. But this night, Shoko doesn't sign it. Shoya does, but she just says goodnight. Odd. Shoko heads back to her family's apartment, and Shoya joins Yuzuru and their mother. Shoko walks home, heads to the balcony, and watches the fireworks for a bit, and then climbs on top of the balcony. Oh, Yuzuru forgot her camera. She asked Shoya to go back and get it. Shoya walks back to their apartment not long after Shoko. He knocks, opens the door slowly so he doesn't spook her. She is deaf after all. The apartment's quiet, lights are off, and then he sees her out there on the balcony, standing on the ledge. We see in the shot her hearing aid on the table beside Shoya. She can't hear him. We realize what's going on about the same time that Shoya does. My heart dropped. She was gonna jump. I started crying right then. Shoya screams her name and runs to stop her, but he trips and falls, slowing him down. I remember crying really hard. I knew I would be destroyed if Shoko died, and if he didn't make it in time. And it seems like he doesn't. We see the balcony, she's gone, then a cut, and he has her. He caught her. I had to pause the movie here. I was crying so hard. I had to pause the movie for about 5 minutes before I could compose myself. And unfortunately, that composure didn't last long. I resumed the movie expecting an emotional scene with some healing and character growth between the two of them. But nope. Shoya slips when helping Shoko up, and Shoko gets up, but Shoya doesn't. He slips and falls in the process and falls off the balcony himself. He falls stories below into the river, and he hits the riverbed and we see him bleed. I had to pause the movie again. Shoya doesn't die. He is in a coma though, but now it's Shoko's turn to grow. Really grow. She starts to choose to be better. She seeks out and tries to help reunite all of their friends. She even extends forgiveness to Naoka, and she starts to love herself. Shoya ends up waking up and they reunite and make amends with each other. Shoko apologizes for attempting to take her life, and Shoya apologizes for all his wrongdoings. And they don't kiss. They don't hug. They decide to help each other live. And it's really fucking pure. And this brings me to the end of the movie. I've never ever cried this hard before in my life. The notes that I wrote down for this part were, I want that. Shoya goes back to school, fresh out of the hospital. He hasn't made up with any of his friends yet, only Shoko. Today's the first day he has to face them again. His school is having a festival, so Shoko ends up going to school with him that day. Shoya has an anxiety attack when they get to school, and Tomohiro ends up heading into the bathroom and helps calm him down. And they make up and they're friends again. And everyone ends up making up and reuniting. Another part about the end was when Shoko helps Shoya with his anxiety at school. She reassures him and lets him know it's okay that he's afraid, and she holds his arm while they walk through the school. And that's something I've always wanted myself. Just someone that when I'm around I can feel more relaxed and okay. So I was feeling a lot of emotions when we got to the very last scene. And it's the one that broke me. So everyone's back together. Even Naoka is hanging around. It's a good day. Shoya looks around. There's X's on people's faces all around him. But he decides to let go. He takes his hands off his ears and he listens. He hears various conversations all around him, and he looks. He looks at the crowd, he looks at their faces. The score swells and we see X's fall off of everyone all around Shoya. Shoya is shocked. He's okay. He's not afraid. He looks at his friends, he looks at his family, and he looks at her. He looks at Shoko and he starts crying. In the middle of the crowd at a school festival, Shoya is so overwhelmed with joy and peace that he starts crying uncontrollably. And we watch him cry with shots of all his friends he's made interspersed throughout. The score settles down. We see Shoko. Then we see her smile. Then we hear her calm piano theme. Then we get the end card. I sobbed for a half hour. Not kidding. I went to bed crying for a long time that night. I woke up and cried some more the next morning. It was all I thought about that day and the next few after. And I think I know why this movie hit me so hard and in such a weird way. I rewatched the scene in preparation for the video and it still made me cry a good bit. It's always a weird cry. It's a cry that feels so happy and full of joy, but also empty and full of despair at the same time. Shoya and Shoko feel like parts of me, and their struggles are very personal to me as well. Their ending are what I hope for. And that's why my notes on the ending just said, I want that. I want someone who helps me feel okay, who helps me be a better person, and someone I feel comfortable around. And I mean, that's something I've lacked. I've had bits of it before, and some things that were close, but nothing as pure as their relationship. We never see physical affection between them. It's not a lustful relationship or one out of pity or any ill will. It's two people who help each other feel okay. And it's a very happy ending. So why am I filled with despair? Well, it's a movie. Shoya and Shoko feel like parts of me, but they're not. They're characters, and the story is fake. It's not my life. And well, it just brings up all the things that I feel like I'm missing in a lot of ways. I think that's why I love it so much, even though it broke me. I never knew a piece of media could do what A Silent Voice did, and I'm not sure if one ever will. I was in the right place, in the right time in my life to watch that movie. And to be honest, I don't think it's an uncommon place to be in either.
Thanks so much for watching my video. This is my very first video, so I hope it was passable enough. I have a lot of other videos in the works, and I've been learning a lot more with each video, so subscribe to see where my channel goes. Currently, the plan is to release a video bi-weekly on Thursdays. So, I'll see you then. Bye!